Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka, and this is episode 20. Guys, 20 episodes of Sex Party. Holy fucking shit. I want to say thank you if you've been listening or watching these last 20 episodes. If you subscribed, thank you very much. If you haven't ever seen my face before or heard my voice before, or if you're not subscribed, welcome and please do subscribe. That would be incredible. No one has thrown any rocks or paint or used sex toys at me in public yet throughout the last 20 episodes. I hope that never happens. I'm not even really clear on why I said that. That's pretty fucking gross. However, this being episode 20, there's a ton of fucking fire in this. There's a ton of value. Christin Henke is my guest this week. She's a somatic sex coach. We talk about her quest to become a somatic sex coach. We talk about how society has baked in a ton of guilt and shame into all of us, how that's fucking up our sex lives and our enjoyment. We talk about how moms are hot and the insane double standard that society places on all women who decide to become mothers. We also talk about how body dysmorphia can fuck up your orgasms and a ton of other amazing things. Welcome to episode 20. Please enjoy my conversation with Christin Henke.
This week's conversation.
Christin Henke, hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Sex Party. How are you?
Hi, Dustin. Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. Feeling good.
Yeah. It's great. You match. It looks great for everybody who's watching the YouTube version of this. So for people who are watching or listening, or reading, right, this episode, and they don't know who you are, can you introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, that whole thing?
Yeah, I always love this. It's like, hey, who are you? What do you do? And it's like, how far back do I start? Like David Copperfield, like chapter 1, I was born. Who I am a heterosexual white female. So there's plenty of privilege that comes along with that. I've also been told that I'm attractive. So there's privilege that comes along with that. Able-bodied, privilege that comes along with that. I am a somatic sex coach. So somatic is a fancy word for body. And I needed something to differentiate me from other sex coaches in the way that I don't just help you fix your blowjob method. While I am here to do that, and I will do it enthusiastically, I also deal with a lot of sexual trauma. So a lot of my clientele come to me because their past trauma is impacting their sexual and intimate relationships. So that's kind of my specialty arena. I also happen to be a mother. I am a wife. I run my own business. I have a podcast. I'm a matcha snob. I make pasta at home. Tiger in the sack. There's a lot.
Yeah, we could dive in all over the fucking place. That's great. Okay, so all of that being said, which you said a lot, but you said a very little too. So this is good. How did you become a somatic sex coach, right? But like take as long as you want. This is your episode. We're here to like party with you, celebrate you, learn all the fucking things. So that being said, right? Was it something that you've known you wanted to be a sex coach for a really long time, or was it something that just like hit you? Or
I wish that I had a more concise answer to this question. I am always envious when someone's like, so give us your origin story. And
Sure.
they've got it. They fucking got it figured out. Mine is kind of twisty and windy, but I will say that I have always been deeply interested in interrelational dynamics. I've always been really interested in sex, sexuality, pleasure, body. And I've always been acutely aware and curious about trauma because I grew up in a household with two parents who were the product of a lot of childhood trauma, differing in varying degrees, but my mother specifically, a lot of sexual trauma. And that was something that was really prevalent in my childhood. It was something that I think she wanted to protect all of her kids from. And me being the oldest girl, I heard a lot about it, and a lot was shared with me at an early age that I didn't have context for, that I couldn't possibly understand at the age at which I learned it.
Right.
But it really did set me on the path to ask questions, to ask why certain things were so scary, or why they made people uncomfortable, or why someone would even do something like that. Or, there were so many questions that I had. So I think curiosity is definitely the driver of this path for myself. And then, to add some spice and flavor, I also grew up in the South, in the Bible Belt, in purity culture, was homeschooled so that I wouldn't get pregnant in high school. Like, there was a lot of repression and conditioning around my sexuality. And for anyone who has met me for 3 seconds, repression and I do not gel. So that was that was the biggest thing. People would make comments about my overt sexuality when I was a child. So it wasn't sexuality. It's called, expression, having a body, being cute, not being afraid to be seen or heard, these kind of things that can really trigger and activate other people who are working through their own things around that. And so I had a lot projected onto me. I had a lot of sexuality projected onto me at a really early age. I think all of that combined just kind of formed the perfect storm, which drove me to really deeply desire to know everything I could know about the subject and everything that touched it. And so that took some interesting twists and turns and branched into trauma work and, somatic trauma resolution and some of these different modalities. I am a yoga, certified yoga instructor. I did trauma informed yoga training. I did a lot of body things. I did a lot working with female anatomy. I did a lot with birth trauma, and just all of these ways in which what has happened to us in the past informs who we are and also how we express, and specifically how we express sexually, whether we feel safe to do so, how our sexuality is such an important and potent piece of who we are, our identity, and what happens when we have these formative experiences that separate us from that connection, that keep us from really owning and being able to move through the world in connection with, our drives and our desires and all of that.
Yeah, I fucking love it. Yeah, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing that, because listen, personal stuff, right? It's like, who are you? I mean, what a fucking dumb question to ask somebody, right? But it's like necessary a little bit
Yeah.
to, but then when someone gives a really thoughtful answer, as my guests almost always do, it's like, yo, wow, okay, what a way to fucking light up the episode right off the rip first. But second of all, the idea is that there's people listening to this or watching this that have gone through something similar, or maybe not similar, but they feel that they're on that sort of same track of, this crazy thing happened to me and whatever. So I thank you for sharing it very much. And so it sounds like there was, like you said, almost like two separate tracks going. You had all of this like sexual curiosity from things that had been sent to you as a child, and things that you had seen or picked up on or absorbed through the adults, right? And then so there's the curiosity piece, and then there's like also like an energy where you're like not only curious, but you have all this like trauma, from other things, and they sort of like have a collision almost, right? Am I
Yeah.
am I getting that correct?
Yeah, there's definitely this convergence between natural, like the curiosity that every human on this planet has had. It's like we all come from sex. So
Mm.
how do we not, like, it is wired into us to want to know about that, to understand that. It's such a vital piece of our expression and our energy and how we interact with others. So there was that, but I didn't experience, and so many people don't experience, that curiosity and those urges to know and explore as normal. we're shamed for it. We're shut down for it. We're told that it's not right, that it's not allowed, that it's, going to send you to hell. There's a whole, you're going to go blind touching yourself. There's like a whole, if you grew up in the religious field at all, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So there was just all of this conditioning that was very to the opposite. Like, this is not normal. This is not okay. And I am someone who I am a questioner. I do not take anyone's word for anything. I need to know for myself. And then even after you tell me, regardless of how qualified you are, if it does not resonate with me as truth, it is still not my truth. And so that was something that was true of me from really early on. So I spent a lot of time questioning and pushing because it just didn't make sense to me. It was like, if this is so terrible, so wrong, so bad, why is everyone obsessed with it? Like, why does everyone, like, so much energy is spent trying to misdirect and keep everyone away from it? So, like, what's actually going on?
Yeah. I mean, they just don't want us to fucking be wild and have a good time. I mean,
Yeah.
no, I'm just kidding. There's so much more at play, people. Don't listen to me. Well, I mean, that's interesting because you're right. There is so much fucking energy and money and time and religion and spent on trying to keep us away from sex and sexuality and orgasms. And then we sort of look around and wonder why like no women can have orgasms and dudes are better at like fucking a wooden board or a doll than they are a real person. Like, how did we get there? Well, I don't know. You kept it away from everybody and
Yeah,
tried
the
to
$1
confuse.
billion porn industry that's being used for sex education. Like,
Right.
no slaps against porn. I am here for ethical porn, but
Yeah, for sure.
as a sexual education tool, that is problematic.
Right. I think I made the comment in a previous episode, like it's like watching the Avengers instead of going to like a self-defense class or something.
Right. It's like when somebody comes for you, that cool splice kick that they train for and run a wire to
Right.
do, like, you're gonna be on your
Yeah.
ass for
You're gonna
sure.
get stabbed.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're gonna be stabbed. Put the shield down. Yeah, and that puts us in a really amazing place with the interview, really, because I'm wondering that collision of fuck trauma and like, oh damn, sex is awesome, right? That curiosity, that drive to know more. When that collision happened, what age were you when you're like, shit, okay, like I've got trauma to work through, but also I think sex is really interesting. So when did that happen? What age were you?
The exact moment I can point to, I was 19, and coming from the background I just described to you, I had actually saved myself for marriage. I was like waiting. I was waiting to have sex, even though I was horny as fuck, even though I was like literally French kissing my little high school boyfriend in the closet at church during choir practice.
Yes.
Like, that was as far as it went, right? Like, even though that would have made plenty of people like spill their communion wine, like, I was chill. Like, for a 16-year-old, I was not out doing drugs. I was not drinking. I was not having sex. I was not giving blowjobs. Like, I French kissed. I let him touch my boobs once. Like, I was pretty chill.
Yeah.
And so I kept it reined in quite tightly until I was 19, and I got engaged.
Oh wow.
To a guy from college, and we moved in together. And that was my first big external. I was like, well, we're going to get married, which is close enough. So, like, we're moving in together. I think at the time I didn't even tell my parents because I moved to another state. I would find later, hindsight is 2020. Looking back, he was definitely instrumental to getting me out of the town and the place that I had always been. So we moved to a different state together. And then I think I was pretty like shady and dodgy about like where I was actually living when we were living together, waiting for the wedding, the marriage to take place. And so essentially this purity culture upbringing, which tells you that, all of your goodness and your pleasure and your body and your sexuality doesn't actually belong to you. It belongs to a man who God picks for you. And when he comes, then you get to express and like give all of these gifts to this dude who somehow deserves them, even though he's been wanking and fucking, and that's fine. His boys will be boys. So that's kind of like just short version, Reader's Digest version of purity culture for you. So the uglier side of that is that if you lose your virginity, which is a social construct, when you lose your virginity before you get married, you are then like a crumpled flower. Like all of that purity and all that goodness and everything is kind of tainted and ruined. And you're lucky if someone like can see through all of that and takes you anyway. So basically, this is stuff that's like fighting in the back of my brain. And literally, though, ever since I ever heard it, I was like, that is some fucked up shit. Like, I'm not here for that. I don't think that's true. That doesn't resonate with Christin. I don't think this is the thing. But it's still there, right? Like that voice is still in my head. So me and my 19-year-old fiance, went a little too far playing just the tip one night, which is, youth groups everywhere, favorite game. So everything but penis, everything but penetration. We were playing that game and just went a little bit too far. And I was like, oh, so we like accidentally had sex, right? It wasn't even fully on purpose the first time. So that happened. And literally the first thought in my head was like, oh my God, like I just had sex and it wasn't that good, obviously. And also I'm kind of like, I'm screwed and I'm screwed. Like, I'm not, am I going to heaven? Like, is this all okay? What's happening? I'm having an existential real crisis. And so the thing that I comforted myself with was I was going to marry this person and I had not had sex with anyone else. So like at the end of the day, still the story, it can be sweet and there's redemption in the story. Like I only had sex with my husband. So I feel like I'm going to get a pass. This is the kind of negotiating shit you do when you're stuck with so many confines. And so I told myself that, made myself feel better. And then we broke up because he's a dickhead. And I was like, oh, well, literally the pussy's out of the bag and she ain't going back in. And my chances are shot and he's gone. And I like sex. And I think now, like, since I don't go to church or even necessarily subscribe to God anymore in this moment as a 19-year-old who gave up her virginity and then didn't get married, I think I'm just going to go fuck a lot and figure out like, like nothing hold me back now. Like if I'm going to hell, I'm going to have fun before I get there was kind of the mentality that I took at that point because I seriously believed that my salvation had been altered by this experience, which is just, I love little Christin and I just want to go back and squeeze her a million times over. And that's a huge part of why I do what I do as well. And so that really was the moment. I was like, I am going to figure out what feels good, what I like. I'm going to figure out, like, I had never acted on any of the information that I had before. I had never experienced, I didn't have any lived experiences of any of the things that I had been so curious about. And I was like, I literally call that time in my life my sexual liberation tour. I'm like, I'm going to go have a great time because nothing matters now. And I'm out of here. I'm out of my hometown. I'm out of the church. I'm out of all these things. And so I just like shook that all off and kind of ran with it. And I'm so grateful. The second person that I had sex with was a 40-year-old ripped like orthopedic surgeon who had been married and recently divorced. And I was supposed to be his rebound. And we ended up being together for like 3 years and being madly in love. And that was great. But this is a man who knows how to give a woman orgasms. So I went from this little 19-year-old, like just the tip game to like having sex with someone who knew what they were doing. And that was one of the greatest gifts of my life.
Yeah, huge upgrade. And also like if he's like getting divorced and you're this young like hot thing, I mean, come on, right?
Our chemistry was a little it was unsafe for everyone.
Yeah, the people in the restaurant are like, should we call someone or
Woo.
what? Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough.
No, that's fucking amazing. I love all of that. And I feel like a lot of people, again, religion or not, spirituality or not, whatever beliefs are fucking rolling around in there, like, rusty marbles, if that's even a thing. Rusty marbles, that's weird.
You might be mixing up some
I
well-known
don't
sayings.
know.
That's okay. My husband does that nonstop. So.
Who knows, right? But like people have these ideas that are just like not healthy for themselves, that it's something. I feel like they were all in that place or close to it where you were, where it's like, well, fuck it. At this point, it went in. I had sex. I might as well just have sex with everyone. I'm not going to have, like, I feel like that's a lot of people. So that's an important story, right? And do you see that still to this day, like with clients, like, oh, I had this trauma around religion and like God not when all of this craziness, or?
Yeah. And what is so interesting, I believe like people will find their people. It doesn't matter if there's a sign up, like you're gonna find the people you're supposed to be with, who you're supposed to work with, who you're supposed to learn from. I really do believe that because by the time I like fast forward almost a decade, by the time I am full-time, like trauma trained, coaching, relationship coaching, working with people on their sex lives, I was not broadcasting in any way, shape, or form, really, that aside from a couple of personal like Instagram posts, that I was like a purity culture dropout expert, that I was like working with people with religious trauma. Like that was not something that I didn't want to be that person. There were plenty of those people, and I didn't want to be known for that. And yet I kept having women who would come to me for issues in the bedroom. And then we started digging around a little bit, and we realized that they grew up the same way that I did, and that they are still carrying all of this internalized shame around expressing their sexuality, or maybe they went off what they perceived was the deep end, and now they wish that they could access that part of them again, but they can't now that they're married because marriage feels different. Or the total opposite, where they waited and they did everything perfectly, and they thought their reward was going to be hot sex, and nothing works, and everything is shitty, and it kind of hurts, and their partner's bad in bed. And it's not that anyone is bad in bed, it's that they're also not educated. They don't know where the fuck the clitoris is. They don't know where anything is. So like, yeah, they're deeply disappointed that sex is painful, and that it's awkward, and that they don't understand their bodies, and that their partner doesn't understand their body. And there's all of these things going on. And it comes from this super harmful conditioning and this lack of information. And I think it's important to say that whether you grew up in the church or not, everyone has gotten some of this. Like no one escaped unscathed, because Western religion is entirely based on the patriarchy. So whether you went to church or not, you are getting this kind of like, these things are for, this stuff is okay for men. The stuff is not okay for women. Like you're a slut if you do this, but you're a hero if you do this. And there's all of this back and forth and this confusion. And so these gender roles and binaries and, reductionist kind of narratives that we have going on all around us, like we have all absorbed it to some extent. And whether we're understanding or aware that we are operating under those, like unconsciously, it's there. If you grew up in America, it's fucking there. And if you grew up somewhere else, you got another level of shit going on.
Yeah. And it's really fucking interesting that you said that, because numerous times on this show with other guests, I have asked the guests, or even sort of like asked the ether or the audience or myself, like, if I'm someone who didn't grow up with religion, I don't buy into it. I think it's fucking it's just fucking bullshit, whatever, right? I'm sort of like, everybody do whatever the fuck they want, sort it out, never, right? Like whatever, right? But yet it is sort of baked into like this weird sort of, is that bad or wrong? Like even for me, who's just like the devil on wheels, right? Like sometimes I have like a moment where I'm like, that doesn't feel right. I mean, it doesn't last. It's like that and it's gone. But I can only imagine what other people feel like. So it's interesting that you say that it is sort of baked in America
Yeah.
and whatever.
Well, one primary way to determine whether you've been touched by this or not is if I were to, if we were talking about some of your friends, and you're like talking about your guy friend and like how many people he slept with. If he shares that he's had 50 partners, sexual partners, you're like, all right, man, get it. Like the masses, especially men, would be like, all right, bro, like bull can pull. Maybe it's like, maybe 50 is low. Like maybe they're like, really? That's all you did? Like you're a good looking cat. Between this time and this time, that's all you got? Whereas a woman's number, is not talked about. It's definitely not bragged about. And there are studies, and I don't have them exactly, so nobody fucking quote me. You can Google it. I'm sure you can find a couple of places.
Sure.
There was a study done at some point. I remember reading about it, about how like men will always increase their number slightly or not slightly to appeal to the masses, and women will always decrease their number to be less threatening, or so that they don't get slut shamed. And so you ask a woman, and she's, oh, I've had 50 partners. Most women, their eyes would get huge. They'd be like, oh, like you'd feel something. Like you wouldn't think anything about it, about the dude, but a woman's like, oh, I've had 50 sexual partners. You get like a little twinge in your stomach. You're like, oh, Like, would I date a woman that I knew had 50 sexual partners? Like, would I take her home to my mom? Like, these are questions people start asking immediately. Whereas, like, a dude with 50 partners, boys will be boys. He was wild back in the day. Like, he's a great dad now, so nobody cares.
I know, right? And this is something that really bothers me as a male. I feel like we should be celebrating sluts. We should be like honoring hoes, right? Like that's what I feel like,
Yes.
because come on, like these are great people who know what the fuck they like, what they're doing there, and it doesn't make sense to me. But you're right, it is baked in, especially amongst males. Like, oh, my girlfriend who I'm dating now, like, fucked a bunch of people, or I'm dating someone in the adult industry and they're like, oh, how could you could never do that? It's like, well, then don't, dumb dumb.
Yeah.
Like
Well, and it's like, and you have no problem like shoving money in her twat and her ass crack and licking her. But like, if you can't date her though, like that would not be acceptable. It's
yeah.
acceptable for you to interact and engage and enjoy, but you couldn't date her. You can't make her a person.
Yeah, and it's fucked up because what I've seen lately, right, is this sort of weird thing where men and women sort of like rag on women who are open about their sexuality, their sex life, maybe they even have like an OnlyFans, or they strip or whatever. It's like, yo, you know how hard that shit is?
Yeah.
First of
Like if
all,
you think you can do it, go do it. Do better.
well, that's the thing, is everybody thinks that they can do porn.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks that they can strip. Everybody thinks that they can have an OnlyFans. They just choose not to because it's the right thing
Right.
or
Because
whatever.
they're moral, right? Because
Sure.
they have a moral compass. That's
Uh-huh.
why.
Let's look at your
Mhm.
browser history
Sure.
and see
Yeah.
how
Let's see
moral
what
you
you're
really
looking at.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um and that to me is a huge part of the culture around sex and acceptance, and I don't think and it's one of my secrets with this show, right? And I'll just expose it here, is that I think being more accepting of sex, right? And being more accepting of like our deep, dark, crazy fucking desires leads to a better, happier culture, saving the world through
No, it
sex, if you
does.
will, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It absolutely does because the thing that we reject in others is always the thing that we reject in ourselves. So the fact that someone would spend so much time and energy being shitty and nasty and aggressive and violent towards people who express themselves openly and feel in touch and confident in their sexuality, these are people who are sexually shut down, or they're people who feel trapped only expressing within the box that they've been put into, and they're very angry about that. And there's a lot of seething and grief and internalized rage that's happening that is being projected onto others who are living in a more free and liberated way.
Yeah, because they're just at the core of it, they want that too,
They
and
want
then
that. They
they're
want to be free. They want to be able to fuck whoever they want and like go where they want and feel comfortable with themselves, feel comfortable with their bodies, feel like what they desire and what they want to experience isn't weird or gross or sick. Like they want to feel whole. They want to feel like a good person. They want to feel like whatever it is that they want is okay. And they don't.
right. And so I guess to ask an impossible question, how do we save everyone?
How do we
Right?
save everyone? I mean, I'm a huge advocate for radical self responsibility. So, the only way I have a shot in hell at equipping someone else to save themselves is to save myself first. And so, I embody my own liberation. I embody my own authentic expression. I do what I need to do. I do my own work and my own therapy and my own coaching and my own deep fucking conscious committed work with my own partner. I like suss out my own demons and play with my own shadows and figure out how to be the realest, rawest, most whole version of myself. And just in doing that, even if I didn't take that into my coaching and my mothering of another person who will then impact other people, like there is this butterfly effect that happens when we do that. But I also, just by being fully and authentically hear myself, I am giving permission to every person I meet and interact with to do the same. Even if I don't ever direct them to do anything, they're like, oh shit, Christin is really living in her fucking truth. I guess if she can do that, then there is the possibility that I can do that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because my answer is far more like destructive and assholey. It's kind of like, hey,
What's
we're
your answer?
we're doing shots of something, and everyone's getting a hall pass, and we're telling our partners what we really want. And we're like, we're gonna act like fucking insane because we're only get one shot at this. So like, either get on board or fucking perish in flames. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Fuck you guys. That's my answer to that, you know. But
Yeah.
it does kind of line up with yours because that's me accepting. I mean, I know I have a good idea who I am, what kind of a person I am, and I'm totally okay with it. So I'm taking responsibility for my fucking insanity, and it's kind of like what you just said in a kind of like in a extreme way, if you will, right?
Yeah. Well, and I've been a lot more extreme over the years, right? It's like I've had all of these different iterations and evolutions of me, and I will continue having them. So, having this conversation when I'm 50 versus now is going to be awesome because I'm sure 50-year-old Christin is going to be a badass boss bitch, and she's going to have some different perspective and a lot more lived experiences to continue informing this lens that I have.
Yeah, I love that. Totally. And you're right. So to bounce back to your story, so you go through all that at 19, you meet the 40-year-old, it's like a hot thing and everything's fucking awesome and whatever. At what point do you realize then in your life, like, shit, like I want to take the trauma, I want to take the fucking great sex and everything I'm learning, combine them and do this for a living? Like, where does that come from?
I think so that, yeah, hot sex and all these things, that was the very beginning. That was like,
Sure.
oh, I feel like based on, because I was always that friend. This is what's hysterical to me. And this is also why, I kind of, I believe in like purpose and people showing up equipped with things that not everyone is equipped with.
Mm,
So even though I grew up in this way, even though I had all of these experiences and all this stuff working against me, there was this part of me that was always walking towards where I am right now, always. And there's something about that that people could always feel. And so even though I was not out doing all these crazy things, I think because I was constantly researching and reading it, like I always had answers to questions. And so all of the other like homeschool girls and church youth group girls would come to me and they'd be like, hey, like on the DL, like we don't want to get in trouble and we don't want, anyone yelling at us the way they yell at you. But like, since you already got yelled at, do you know the answer to this question that we all have? And I was like, I do actually. I found it out in the midst of getting yelled at. Here it is. And so there was this, I was constantly passing on this information that to me felt like it shouldn't be private, and yet it always was. So I would kind of be the front line. I would like go through and take all the shit and I would find what we all needed to know and I would bring it back and I would share everything that I learned. And that has always been the case. And so then when I started having sex and started having these lived experiences, the calls kept coming, the texts kept coming. Like, okay, I can't ask anyone this. I can't even tell anyone that I want to know this, but I know that you're a safe person and you're not going to out me. And like, you're also probably going to know. So, like, what's up with this?
mm,
And so I would support my friends and their friends. They would give, like, think about early 20s. Like, my friends, drunk friends, are texting me because they had a conversation about me. And they're like, you know who might know about this? You should text her right now. And so I would get texts from people I didn't know asking me questions about butt sex and questions about, their clitoris and questions about condoms and lubes and like all these things, just because it was well known in the world that I could find out the information if I didn't know the information. And people just didn't know where to go and they felt uncomfortable. And so there was this kind of like big sister, cool aunt vibe that I had where it's like, yeah, I'll tell you that. And I'll tell it to you in a non-condescending way. And I'll
mm.
make it feel normal and safe and just give you what you need to be successful at your venture and safe as possible. And so I think that kind of followed me as I, was looking into breaking out of, if the person I've described so far already doesn't sound like someone who would do well in corporate America, like you're correct. Like I was not cut out to have a boss or have anyone tell me what to do. So I very quickly, after working in a startup, and I worked in the medical field, I worked in plastic surgery. Like, I've lived a billion lives in my short time on this earth. And I didn't want to get stuck. I didn't want to wake up, 25 years from 25 and be the manager of the same medical clinic, because I knew them. I knew 50 and 60-year-old women who'd been sitting behind the same desk, working with the same doctors, putting up with the same shit. And they had really secure jobs and great medical benefits, but they were miserable, and they complained to me and talked to me about their sex life all day long and all the sex they weren't having. And so basically this wheel started turning, and I was like, okay, how do I work for myself? What is a skill that I have? What can I offer? And I started basically, down this path of entrepreneurship, and I was trying to basically create the job that I wanted. When I started taking all of the courses and the certifications that would lead to me being a sex coach, I didn't know that there was such a thing as a sex coach. I didn't know that that was a job. And so I was doing, trauma informed stuff with yoga and with postpartum. I was certified as a postpartum doula, which is someone who takes care of the mother after the baby is born and helps kind of integrate into motherhood, and, knows a lot about the body and what the body has been through in childbirth. And that was something I felt was important, because a lot of women struggle with their sexuality post motherhood, because suddenly all of your parts and body are very utilitarian, and it can feel very weird to get back to a place where, they're sexual, you're a sexual object. Like, we have a big time Madonna whore complex in the US, where it's like mothers are desexualized the second a baby leaves their body, which is a shame. Because again, sex got us all here. And so the fact that act then knocks you down, like knocks you off the peg, and you're no longer a sexual being because you gave birth, is total bullshit. So I was very much throwing spaghetti against the wall, but again, following my curiosity and digging into areas that I felt like I wasn't getting enough information about, because if I wasn't getting information, no one was getting information. So how do I, typical Christin, get as much information as I can, and then get into a place or have a platform where I can then share that with everyone else in order to change the conversation and the experience that we're all having. And so I think the trauma piece came in last. And that was when I, launched my coaching business and was helping women with sex. And they would come in because they wanted tangible, tactical things. They wanted to know how to give a better blowjob. They wanted to know how to have better orgasms on their own. They wanted to know what toys to use. They wanted to know which positions. They wanted to know how to get over feeling scared and insecure. They wanted to know how to stop thinking about what their stomach looked like so that they could actually breathe and have sex. Like, these are the things they wanted to know. And as I would get into it with them, 9 out of 10 times, we would eventually end up at a trauma in their past. There would be an assault. There would be something that happened in childhood. There would be, something that took them outside of their body and made them feel unsafe. There would be there was trauma. There was trauma. And it always came back to that. That was always the moment that they didn't feel safe to be seen, or they didn't feel safe to be heard, or they didn't have access any longer to what they actually wanted and how they wanted to be perceived and how they wanted to show up in a relationship. There was only the version of them they became to survive. And I realized that until we addressed that, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what I taught them about handies and blowjobs. It didn't matter what I taught them about anal. It didn't matter. If they didn't have safety in their own body, if they couldn't stay in their body while they're at the grocery store, they're not going to stay in their body while they're in the bedroom with a partner. And we couldn't go one step further until we addressed that. And so that's when I really started dialing in on the trauma. And I'm still in there. It's a very lengthy process. I'm still being educated in Dr. Peter Levine's Somatic International Institute. It's a 3-year professional program, but he is someone whose work has greatly shaped my work and how I facilitate my clients and work with the renegotiation of trauma, because it's all body-based. It's based in nervous system regulation and bringing them back to a place where they can access safety, where they can access breath, where they can feel their own body, because so many people are dissociated during sex because of all of the stories and because of things that have happened to them. And so that's it. It all eventually came together. It was a messy experimental journey, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't think I've ever done anything in my life that hasn't informed and benefited the work that I do now.
Wow. Okay, first of all, because um there's so much there, but I think the piece that immediately fucking grabs me and sort of like punches me in the nose is that there is all of these people, women, right, who don't feel great about themselves for whatever reason. Like you said, the stomach, the fucking I look stupid, or he's been with hotter, or my dad did this, or whatever these things are. There's millions of reasons to feel like shit about yourself. And then that prevents you from feeling good inside yourself. I mean, right? Fucking
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
revelation right there. And I just sort of boiled it down to the fucking idiot version, but still, like, I think that is really fucking important in this episode that you said that, because is there anything more important than feeling better about yourself so you can feel good inside? And we're talking about orgasm, right? But it's deeper than that too. Because if you can't have an orgasm, clearly you're walking around with this shit in your head that's also preventing you from feeling, positive about yourself in any way. Can't look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You can't fucking. So I want to dive into that. I have no idea even what pieces of it I want to dive into it, but I just want to really engulf
Like,
us.
I want to swim in here though, whatever
Yeah,
it is. I want
because
to swim in here.
because I think that that's more than important. And how do people make themselves feel better? What is a good first step to be like, this is a fucking issue and I don't want to feel it anymore. I'm so goddamn sick of feeling this one thing. How do I get beyond it? Because I want to come, I want to smile, I want to fucking feel good, I want to be able to whatever it is. What's a good first step?
I think a good first step is to focus on how things feel and not how they look, and that's the thing that makes us feel shitty about ourselves, is comparison. It's always looking outside. Like, the more you're looking outside, the shittier you feel. It's the doom scrolling on Instagram. Again, it is porn and these women who have been hired to perform, and they've been chosen based on a very white heterosexual male lens, and we have been fed as a society these ridiculous reductionist beauty standards that do not account for most of the population's bodies, most of the population's skin color, most of the population's orientation and method of expression. And that is so damaging. Like, it's so incredibly damaging to look at magazines and look at movies and look at all these things and not see yourself, to see something that is upheld as the ideal. And you're supposed to be this. And the further you perceive yourself from being that, the shittier about yourself you feel. And so, one of the realizations that I had to have, and I don't want to sound like a jackass for saying this, but like, people are going to take it how they take it. Like, in my early 20s, I was much thinner than I am now. And I was told often that I was sexy and that I was gorgeous and all these things. And I freaking worked out 3 times a day, and I starved myself, and I spray tanned, and I plucked, and I waxed, and I polished, and I teased, and I did all these things. I looked like a fucking Barbie doll. And I still couldn't get off because I was holding in my stomach, which was already flat. And that's because of what we see in media. You're supposed to be this. This equals desirable. Anything not this, not desirable. And I didn't know yet at that time that shit doesn't fucking matter, and that most of the world doesn't look like that. And that even the people who do look like that don't actually look like that. I didn't know that yet. And so, something I really had to work on in my own therapy, in overcoming an eating disorder, in dealing with all of these things, was, well, how do you feel when you're having sex? Like, is sex actually fun? does it actually feel good? Do you actually like doing those things, or are you performing? Are you shaping your body the way we have been shown we're supposed to shape it to look a certain way? Are we making a certain sound because we've heard that that is the sound we're supposed to make to let everyone know they're doing a good job? Like, we have been taught how to perform sex. We've not been taught how to have sex. And so there's like two parts when you talk about how, you can't have an orgasm because you're in your head. That's true. The other half of you can't have an orgasm because you don't know what's going on with your body. You don't know how to have an orgasm because you were brought up, taught that masturbation is wrong and that touching yourself is a sin, or that it's gross, or that it's dirty, or that you shouldn't do that. And so there was no exploration. You didn't learn how your body works. You didn't figure that out for yourself first. So then you're not able to teach a partner how to help you, how to support you, what feels nice. You also don't have open, honest conversations about what feels good and what doesn't feel good. So therefore, nobody can ever learn anything. It's a very close-ended, quiet, shady situation where most people aren't having orgasms because they don't know how their body works, and their partner doesn't know how their body works. And yet TV, Hollywood media, even all the freaking, the fake reality shows that are totally scripted. It's like the sex that we see is all very still. It's all very penis and vagina, like 30 seconds of vigorous thrusting. And then they have a spontaneous orgasm together, which never fucking happens. Like, all of that is anatomically incorrect. Like, that is not going to happen for most of the population. And so I think there's all of that. It's just like we've been so programmed to think about the performance of sex that we don't know anything about the experience of sex. And so when I work with women who are dealing with body issues, I give them things. And again, shit that goes on in the bedroom, it doesn't ever start in the bedroom. So to fix stuff in the bedroom, we have to go out and we have to start like on the front porch of the house and work our way in. Like, you got to go through all the other rooms first. And so if you're feeling activated, if you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling dissociated, if you're feeling insecure in your body in the bedroom, we need to get out of the bedroom and we need to start focusing on how to feel strong and capable in your body, how to feel a little more welcome and at home in your body, in different settings, in different scenarios, in your own bedroom, when you're alone, when you're out with girlfriends, when you're on the beach in a bathing suit. Like, there are a lot of places we can start creating this sense, this felt, what we call the felt sense of safety, the experience of feeling good in our body, of feeling present in our body, even if good isn't an option right now. Can we feel present in our own body? Can we focus on what is happening with us? Can we think about our own bodily cues? Are we hungry? Like, what do we want to eat? What do we want to drink? Do we like how our clothes feel on our body? Do we like how our shoes fit our foot? Do we like how our chair feels when we sit in it? Like, if we can tune in to the bodily sensations we're experiencing all the time, there's a lot less time and space for the nonstop nonsense about how shit looks. Like, you're too busy focusing on the actual thing and experience to be worried about what shit looks like. Because I will tell you, the most transcendent sex of my life, I'm sure, was ugly as fuck. Like, I'm sure it was not cute at all. That's how real sex is, though. Everything is squishy and twisty and worst angles ever. Like, show me somebody getting pile drived who has like a great facial expression. Show me that, because your chin is up like this and your ass is over your head and like your leg is bent because you're not that flexible. Like, it is not a cute position. And yet you want to squirt, like, go right there. So it's how do things feel, not how does shit look. We have to stop being obsessed with how shit looks.
Yeah, I mean, fuck yeah, times 10 on that piece, because I think that that's fucking huge, just to accept the dumb shit, right? Like, this idea of looking stupid, and it goes like, in public, I don't want to look stupid. Like, with a partner, I don't want to look stupid, but nothing good happens until somebody looks a little fucking stupid, right? No one's
Yeah.
like, and that's why it's so important to fucking hear that stuff. And I think also, too, to jump back to the porn thing, it's important to point out, as previous guests have, there's nothing wrong with porn, right? But those people have trained for that. That is that, I mean, we're watching it because we want to get off and all of this stuff, right? We're going to it because of the entertainment value of it and whatever. But those are like athletes, those are professionals. They're doing that for like 8 hours. They're going home.
Yeah.
They're getting in an
They get
ice bath.
awards for it on
Yeah.
stages. Like, this is something that they put a lot of time and effort and thought into, like, and it is a performance. And yeah, I have nothing against porn. There are plenty of pseudo sexual spiritual people who don't like porn, and that's fine. That's their own perspective.
Right.
We are sensory creatures, and so and we're all stimulated differently. We all respond to stimuli differently from each sense. Some people are visually stimulated. And so it's important to understand that about yourself, but then to also know where to go to get that visual stimulation that isn't going to make you feel shitty. So, like, I'm here for good, ethical porn, but if it makes you feel shitty about yourself, maybe it's not a great option. There's a lot of ways that you could be visually stimulated that don't require you looking at other people. You could take a video of yourself masturbating, for example, and watch it. You could literally turn your camera towards you. You don't even have to record. You could watch yourself getting off if that turns you on. You can install mirrors. You can, like, there's all these different things you can do to get a more visual components to sex that could be really supportive and helpful. And sometimes I think we have such an issue with dysmorphia as a culture. I don't think anyone really knows what they look like. Like, I know that's a funny thing to say.
It's not.
But all the like squeezing and sucking in and contouring and filters and like all these things, like, nobody has a real sense of what they fucking look like. No one. And so I think sometimes people are surprised at how good they look. Like, I think you'd be surprised. Like, I remember having this moment where my body, I had a decent amount of, I was very insecure about my body for a really long time. And I remember catching a glimpse of myself. I think I was at a hotel and there was a big, beautiful mirror, like, across the room from the bed. But it was like, once I was on the bed and we were having sex and I was on top, and I remember like catching a glimpse. I hadn't realized it was there. And I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And I was fucking riding. And I was like, fuck, is that me? I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I look kind of really good right now. And that was just this huge revelation. Like, all this time I thought, like, what I thought I looked like in my head, I was so much better than what I thought in my head. I was like, I look great. Like, why did I think that I looked like that? And so I think that's interesting. I think, like, if you want to really just fuck shit up, just ask yourself, like, do I even know what I look like? Like, I'm being real harsh on myself. Like, am I even seeing myself clearly? Because the chances are you're not. You're seeing yourself through all of these lenses we've so kindly been provided, and none of them are actually you.
Yeah, lenses that are designed to, like, plug you into the social network and use your fucking creative outputs to make money for advertisers or to buy fucking makeup
and to
or
make you spend billions of dollars
Yep.
on cosmetics and cosmetic surgery. Yes, all of that.
Exactly. Again, nothing is wrong with any of that if
No,
that's what
if
you
you
want
want
to
to
do.
do that and that makes you feel fucking good, then, like, I'm here for it. Again, I'm here for your liberation and authentic expression. If that is part of it,
Yeah.
that's great. But, like, doing it because you feel like you're fucking ugly if you can't afford a $300, like, product for your face, like, that kind of shit fires me up.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I've had those moments too, like, where I'm like, "Fuck, man, I look like a 900-year-old mummy right now. What is wrong with my fucking face?" And then I've had other moments where I'm like, "God damn, who's that?" Or whatever.
Looking good.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Exactly.
And it changes. It changes based on your mood and based on how much access you have to your nervous system and regulation. It changes based on the fucking moon and the day of the month and, like, how you feel about your job and how much you're working out and how your internal relationships are going. Like, all of these things impact how we feel about ourselves.
Yeah, they do, and nobody talks about that shit, right, at all. And here we are doing it, which is fucking wonderful. And the idea that nobody knows what they really look like, boom, another fucking huge, blow to the fucking face on this episode from you. That's amazing. That's a huge. That will definitely be on one of the quotes, right, when your episode drops, because that is so important, and I have never heard it worded that way. What an amazing, eloquent way to say, like, we're all fucked up. you know,
Yeah.
and again, and then I know it takes, coaches like yourself and a lot of self work. And some people really prescribe to all these different things and meditation or whatever. But I'm still like with you, like driving at how do we just hone in on getting someone on the correct path to maybe figuring out what they really truly look like in the mirror, right?
Yeah. I think something really important and that helped me, and that's even as a coach, I will always tell you, like, what I'm delivering is from my lived experience. That's all that anyone can honestly do. So if someone is saying that they figured out this for everyone, they're full of shit, and you should probably review that relationship. But what was really powerful for me was to really take stock of what I was ingesting, because the only way to stop seeing the programmed images is to remove yourself from them or them from you. And so I would do things like I had to go through my Instagram, for example, and unfollow all of the girls who had bodies that genetically I am never going to have, no matter how much fucking yoga I do, no matter how much I intermittent fast and run and do HIIT and whatever. Like, I am never going to have an 8-pack in the ass of a 12-year-old boy. That is never going to happen for Christin. That is not going to happen. And yeah, I was like seeing these images every day. These are beautiful, strong women who are out there doing their thing, and I wish them no ill whatsoever. But it was causing me to view my body negatively when I compared it to their body that was unattainable for me. And so I went through a season where I looked for women who had body shapes like mine, especially women who were really fashionable, who had like hips and thighs like mine and tiny waists like mine. And they were dressing well and they looked fierce and they were like owning it. They were confident and they looked sexy. And I just filled my feed with accounts and people and things that made me feel better about what I already had, instead of constantly looking to outsource, or I was looking for the things that I didn't have. And I changed that in my reading and in what I'm listening to. And I really started to shift my focus into how do I, like, simply put, how do I work with what I've got instead of being so concerned about what everybody else has? Because you could line up, and this helped me later in life in business. Like when you're working for yourself, especially in the coaching industry, there's a billion coaches. Coaching is a relatively, like, it's still kind of a wild west. It's relatively like there's not a ton of accountability, which should make you nervous. Like, you should look into people's credentials and qualifications and like what they did, what their lived experiences are that got them to where they are. Because in the United States, anyone can call themselves a coach. Anybody. You don't have to have certification to call yourself that. So there's a lot of people in the same space who claim by title do the same thing. But I'm not worried about what every other sex coach is doing. I'm worried about, what do I uniquely offer? Like, what do my personal lived experiences and the things that I've learned and the way that I interact and the success that I've had with my clients, like, what does all of this information tell me about how I can be the most potent person and how I can offer the most service? Like, what is my unique gift that I have to give? And that's all I focus on. I don't focus on what anyone else is doing or what the trend is, or because you'll make yourself crazy with that shit. Like, you will drive yourself nuts trying to keep up with the proverbial Joneses. And so really, I think the most practical thing you can do is, again, like, it's always going to come back to you. Like, I want you to come home to yourself, to your own place, to your own career, to your own desires, to your own relationship. Like, what do you want? Not like, what do you think you're supposed to want or what do you want to want? Like, if you actually got really, really honest, what do you care about? Because people chase things all day long that they don't care about if they were being really, really honest with themselves. It's just, it looks really good on Instagram and everybody else has it. So I feel like I'm supposed to want that and I'm supposed to have that. And that's what success means, or that's what being attractive means, or whatever. And again, coming back to this place of feeling, I think this was huge for me after having a baby. It's like, I am now in a body that I don't recognize. I have just had an experience that like has changed everything about me. How do I get back to this place where I feel really good, even though I know that I'll never go back to pre-baby Christin? That's not going to happen. So like, what does this look like for me now? And that was a slow journey of acceptance and focusing on regaining strength and vitality and like feeling like myself, connecting to hobbies and people and things, like buying new clothes that fit what was going on right now, that still like said Christin and gave the wink to the old girl, but also like honored the new girl. It was like these little things that were so practical that, you know, all added up together really bring you into this more healthful kind of integrative state of being with yourself.
Yeah, and that's huge, and it sort of leads perfectly to two separate places, and I'll address the one that you just spoke about. So in a culture that we live in, where on the surface, like you said earlier in the conversation, it's like your body, when you become a mother, becomes very utilitarian, and society can sort of like make you unsexy because now you're a mom and da 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 and all this bullshit, right? On the other hand, on the other side of the coin, or the flip side of the mirror, whatever the fuck metaphor we want to use, right? There's like wild ass like MILF categories like on porn sites, and like it's like a thing, right? And everybody like won't maybe admit it on the surface, like, oh, moms are, whatever, but they're going home and like Googling like hot MILF threesome or whatever, right? So when you became a mom, how did you sort of reconcile that? Did you have like doubt, like I got to be this fucking, and with your clients too, like you said, they come to you and they're like, I don't know, my body's, again, like I had a child or children, so my body's this way, I don't feel this way, da da da. How do you sort of reconcile the two? Because there is some sort of truth. Moms are hot, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a thing. It's just
Dude,
you know.
and I think I'm like, dude, like, you don't know what every mom on this earth has gone through. Like, they should be hotter. Like, you should be worshiping the fucking ground they walk on. Like, I labored, I'm crazy. So I chose to labor in my fucking home without drugs for
Mm,
24 hours and then pulled my daughter out of my body, like
wow.
by my own. And that, like we go through, no matter how you decide to give birth, the act of growing a human and getting them out here alive it should be, you're worshipped, you're a deity at this point. Like, that's what happens. That's all that should happen.
Sure.
But also, like, hearing you just reflect back, that it just brings me back to the earlier part in the conversation, which is like everything that we reject is something that we actually just really, we like rejected in ourselves. We do that because we're uncomfortable thinking about that, because we can't reconcile our mother as a human being who has needs and has sex and orgasms and all of this stuff separate from us. That's hard, and I think, gratefully, I waited until I was 30 to have a baby. Like, I waited until I kind of had worked through all my body shit, and like, not to say that it was not activated and I did not have to use all of my tools and stay on top of it. Like, that was a huge process for me and most women, I would believe. Anyone who's chosen to give birth, I should say, not even women. Anyone who's chosen to give birth, like, it's a huge transformative, like, it will grab the tenderest parts of you and it will rip them open, and then you have to rearrange them and like keep going. And I think that I'm just really grateful that I was already in this line of work when I got pregnant and when I became a mom. So I knew already, I knew about this. I knew about this thing that happens where you have a baby and suddenly you're invisible. It's
Right.
like you're expected to bounce back immediately, but also like, don't ever be too hot again because you're someone's mom now. And like, but also like, it's like you're hot, but just enough to be invisible. Like, you can't be big enough. You can't like keep the baby weight on too long because then you're like gross. But if you like bounce back, like, that's cool, but also like tuck it in and you're in J. Crew now. Like, better not see those boobs. Like, it's, yeah, literally. It's
Yeah,
like, ugh.
exactly.
And so I think one thing I did for myself was, and it wasn't often, again, because of my line of work, but anytime I had the thought, like, if I hesitated to do something because I was a mom now, I made the conscious decision to do it. I was like, I'm going to do that because, yes, I just became this child's mom, but I have 30 plus years of experience being myself, and I'm still myself, even though I'm now this person's mom. And so there is it's a conscious, it is an ongoing conscious decision. And I think I am coming from a place like I have a daughter and I'm like, I want her to see me authentically expressing and not being afraid to be 100% human. I am not a sexless, holy woman who offers you nourishment and nothing more. Like I am a human being with emotions and desires and tits and ass that are used for other things besides your care. And now that you're two and, like they have other stuff going on for them. And it was just a slow and is an ongoing process. At this stage, I really don't ever think about like, oh, I wouldn't do that because I'm a mom. Like there is nothing that I wouldn't do now that I'm a mom that I did before. Like that doesn't exist for me. Other than maybe like party drugs because I can't if I die because I get a bad batch of Molly, that is not how I want my child to know that I went out. Like I just can't risk it. So unfortunately party drugs are out right now.
Yeah.
But maybe one day I'll be able to reconcile
Yeah.
that. But other than that, I would say everything else is the same. It's like I do believe in keeping things age appropriate for your children and like explaining to them within the age range like what they need to know, and there's stuff they don't need to know, but just normalizing bodies aren't just for sex. I have a body and it's a body. Like we walk around naked, we're a naked house, like we talk about body parts, she knows all of hers. And it's because bodies are sexualized, which is so funny because again, it's like we're here because of sex. And then everybody sexualizes bodies and then everybody criticizes bodies and everybody tries to desexualize you for like having a body. And it's just this like, no wonder everybody gets so fucked up and there's so much postpartum depression and anxiety and like feeling totally lost and like you don't know who you are anymore after you have a baby. But I think I just really focused on all of the things that I did and loved that were just mine, that I did that weren't because I was her mom and that weren't because I was married and my husband likes them and we do them together. It's like I really found the time to invest in myself and continue doing things and pursuing things that only benefit me so that I could remember that I am a whole entire person with a personality and likes and dislikes that have nothing to do with my baby. Like she's going to get the best of me when I have poured into myself first. That's the main thing. And for me, sex is one of those things. And so like I got to keep that sex life right. And that was conversations with my partner. And I had to relearn my body the way that I would tell anyone who never had the opportunity to learn their body before they had a child. I just went and repeated that after I had a baby. I was like, things feel different. Like some stuff that used to work all the time doesn't really work now. And that's for whatever reason. I don't really have to know why. It's just they don't, or like certain things that don't appeal to me anymore. And so through my own like self pleasure, masturbation, experimentation, I figured out what was good for me now. And I kept Mike updated. I like communicated to him what that stuff was so that we could just grow and evolve as I'm growing and evolving, because we're not static creatures. Like whether you have a kid or not, we're going to continue to age forward. And so there's hormones that shift and we gain weight and we lose weight and we go through grief and we experience loss and we have all these things that impact our desire and our drive and our connection to our body again. And so there's all of these opportunities where we're going to have to stay tuned in and we might need to relearn something, and that's totally normal. And we have to normalize that. So I know I kind of like went off to the side there.
No.
And so hopefully I answered your question and then some.
You did. You have this whole episode, which is fucking. I don't wanna end this episode. I want to spend more time with you. So I'm gonna have to bring you back on the show. But in closing, and take as much time as you want, because what is time?
Time is a construct too.
Exactly. So, can we leave the audience with some hope, right? Because shit is fucking crazy, and maybe people are stressed out and they're stuck in their heads, therefore they're stuck in their body, right? And can you give them some sort of advice or guidance? Just it can be basic, it can be elaborate, totally up to you.
Yeah, I think after everything we covered, I mean, there's a couple things that I'll come back to. One thing that I deeply believe with one of my ethos would be that pleasure is a function of safety. Expression is a function of safety. And so many people, when I say the word safety, they're going to be like, I don't even know what the fuck that is, because my lived experiences have taught me that nothing is safe. And so I understand that can be really challenging even there. Safety, if we were to use other language, a place where things don't feel so hard, like a place where you can feel your feet on the floor, a place that feels welcoming and warm, a place that feels calm, a place that feels like the opposite of conflict or fear. Like, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about safety. And until we have access to a place like that within our own body and our life, it's almost impossible to fully give yourself over to pleasure and embodiment and authentic expression, like all of those things. Like, we live in a world that's taught us that those things can be very dangerous. And so without this anchor point or this access to somewhere that feels safe, like, we can't ever get there. And so I think what I would leave people with is just, first of all, that you're worthy of those feelings, that you're worthy of safety. That's number one. You don't have to do anything to earn it. You came out being that way, like, because you were born, because you are you. You deserve to know what it's like to feel safe and to feel seen and to have your voice heard and to, go to sleep at night and feel like everything's going to be okay. Like, you deserve that. And if you are in a relationship or in a job or in an environment that doesn't make you feel like that, and you don't have access to any of that, then maybe some changes need to be made. And maybe you need to call a friend who does make you feel like that. Maybe you need to call the one person in your life who would pick up your call anytime. And maybe you need to start having conversations around what it would take to help you feel that way in some place in your life. Because where we establish that in one place, it'll grow and expand, but we have to kind of like set that anchor first. And so often the best way to do that is, again, it's like it's with ourself. It's here with ourselves. And it can be as easy, in somatic experiencing, something that we'll do was it's orient, as we'll have you sit and feel your feet on the floor. Like, actually think about it. Like, we go all day floating above our body, doing all of these things. It's like, can you feel your feet on your floor right now? Like, can you feel all 10 toes? Like, are you aware of them? Can you feel your heels? Like, is the weight evenly distributed between both feet? And then if you have contact with that, like, can you feel your legs? Can you bring them online? You can shake your calves and like feel the muscle move away from the bone. Like, can you feel your legs, like the weight, the density of your muscles and your bones? And then you come into your seat, can you feel the chair under you? And as you're kind of taking stock and just like being really, really present, like, what is my breath doing? Like, are my shoulders away from my ears? Am I breathing easily? Am I breathing naturally? Is there somewhere that I could release or relax a little bit as I'm kind of getting more into my body? And sometimes that is all it takes to be like, oh, like, I feel like shit's stressful, but like, I'm okay. Like, I could probably call someone right now. I could probably, go get a turkey sandwich, and that would be really comforting. I could probably, like, there's things we can do to kind of increase this feeling of comfort and goodness within ourselves. And there's a lot more I could say about that, but it's like, these are things you can do right now just to give yourself the space to notice, like, am I okay? Like, is everything going all right? Like, am I, like, who do I need to call? What do I need to do? It's just, I don't think we check in with ourselves nearly enough. Like, we're in a world that is full of external stimuli vying for our attention nonstop. And it's really, really hard to figure out what you really look like, what you really want, how you really feel with so much information coming from the outside. So, like, what can we do to quiet the noise a little bit?
Wow, love it. Like, absolutely. That's huge, right? It's a huge first step, and thank you so much for doing that, for saying all of that, and sort of walking us through that. Christin Henke, thank you so much for being here on Sex Party. Where can people find you? Where can people fill up your calendar and drive you crazy?
I do hang out on Instagram. I'm aggressive though. So if you come creeping on my page, I will block your ass because I'm not here for creepy shit and people sliding into my DMs. But if you are here for a real conversation and support and to talk about embodied safety and living your best life and being in your body and all that good stuff, I'm at Christin.Henke. And I also have a website, christinhenke.com. If people still go to websites, it's probably outdated and I should go look at that at some point. But the basic stuff is there. There's a forum there. You can send me an email. As long as you're respectful, you may absolutely drop into my DMs. And Dustin, it's been a real pleasure. And I never take it for granted when somebody entrusts me with their audience. So thank you for having me and allowing me to share a little bit of what I'm doing to hopefully save the world through sex.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure, my honor. And I think the audience is clearly going to be better for everything that you have given today on the show. And like, you're not going to escape. I'm going to drag you back into this
Oh my God,
mess.
please do. I'm
Yeah.
full body. Yes, absolutely. I would love to come back. That would be
100%.
total bliss.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show. We will link up soon. We'll get you back. And we have so much more to talk about. I'm like doing my best to shut the fuck up and end the episode. So with that being said,
just end it, Dustin. We'll come back. Part 2 coming soon.
For sure. We'll see you soon. Big thanks to Christin Henke for being my guest here on episode 20. Amazing interview. Tons of value. I hope you guys got a ton of stuff out of that. If you did, head over to her Instagram, say hello, follow her, like all of her stuff, work with her in the future. She's a killer. She knows her stuff inside and out. If you guys are loving Sex Party and the 20 episodes that are available, if you're listening to this on platforms like Apple and Spotify, look, you can subscribe to the show there. You can leave a review there. You don't have to do these things. I say this every week, but if you do these things, it does help the show grow. It helps the algorithm, all of this stuff. So I really fucking appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, yo, how you doing? Episode 20. Feeling okay? Great. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. You can leave a comment. You can like the video. It helps a ton over there as well. Comments and subscribing on YouTube actually like make the YouTube algorithm pop like crazy. So you don't have to do a goddamn thing, but if you do, appreciate it. Love ya. It's going to help the show do some wacky things this year. As always, you guys can send me a message on Instagram, and I can't wait to see you right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin at Dustin Rybka.